Bitcoin is much more optimistic and hopeful because, in the future, I think we all still benefit from having this technology. If we change how we use it, can be used to be much more productive and make us happier and more efficient. And Bitcoin has a role in that version of the future. And so gold doesn't. There's a bit of ego involved with shaking out someone's pre-existing beliefs, get them to admit that the thing that they've been doing their whole lives or that they're so accustomed to is wrong is very, very difficult. We have the opportunity to dive further and further in and help them gain knowledge in the nuanced areas, again, of sending and receiving Bitcoin, great, but then how do I manage my UTXOs if I'm going to worry about privacy or worry about fees in the future? I am never going to just send someone gold or never going to spend my gold, or if it ever gets to the point that I need to spend my gold, things will be so bad that I'll be better off with lead than with gold, right? I'll be better off with a gun and some bullets than with a pile of yellow shiny rocks.
Before we get started with the topics, give us some small background of who you are and why you're excited about Bitcoin.
Yeah, sure thing. So my background was in banking and wealth management and management consulting. I worked on Bay Street, which is Canada's Wall Street, for a little over 10 years before finding Bitcoin, we could call it, for the second time, because I encountered it a little earlier in my career in 2010, but I didn't end up really buying any or doing anything with it. But I sort of started to understand some of the principles and was interested in it. But towards the end of that part of my career, of my corporate career, I discovered Bitcoin and started putting together the pieces of, philosophy and technology and economics, and it was all making sense for me. And basically at the end of 2017, early 2018, dove in, just full steam ahead into Bitcoin. I wound up writing a book about Bitcoin in 2020, Magic Internet Money, a book about Bitcoin. And I've been advocating for it ever since.
Really, really interesting. What is the book about? Is it kind of like an introduction to Bitcoin?
Yeah, it's meant to take you into the shallow end of the Bitcoin pool, get you used to the temperature of the water. I'm trying to introduce you to a variety of different topics around Bitcoin. So, the origin story of Bitcoin, learning about money. The back of the book says, "What is money?" It's just in big letters. That's the only thing I have on the back of the book. So learning about money, economics, but also governance, freedom, why Bitcoin is resilient, why its scarcity is different from other sort of forms of scarcity, if you want to think about it that way, or why its scarcity is truly absolute. I take a look at some of the drawbacks or potential drawbacks of Bitcoin. And then basically the idea is every page is its own sort of short essay. So you just read it in little chunks and you're just building your knowledge block by block, as it were, until you can stand back and perhaps have a clearer picture of what Bitcoin is. And then from that, you can go explore whichever area of interest is, most appealing to you.
Why did you choose Magic Internet Money as the kind of catchphrase?
Well, Magic Internet Money originated in Reddit. That was there's a picture of like an 8-bit wizard as the original Bitcoin Reddit profile picture. And so I sort of used that as my inspiration. I also liked the idea of a book that had some whimsy to it. It was a little playful. So the text of my book, it's very friendly. It's very relatable. I use a lot of analogies. I'm not trying to inundate people with jargon. There's a lot of pictures. So again, it's trying to take a very complex topic, make it simple, make it digestible, because it's in those little sort of bite-sized essays. I'll flip to a page for anyone who can see visually. And every page is individually titled with a quote. And the quote may be historical, some kind of philosopher, economist, politician, but it might also be from a comic book. I quote Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It really runs the gamut. And yeah, that's, the idea is just get you used to the concepts of Bitcoin, and then you sort of go explore on your own.
And we talked about it before. You're now focusing more on the how of Bitcoin with Bitcoin mentors. Do you think we kind of don't have to explain that much more of like why Bitcoin? Because we have really good books. Like we have a lot of different podcasts, a lot of different videos, a lot of different books around there.
I'd love to say that we don't have to explain the whys of Bitcoin, but that's just it's not true. Every Bitcoiner is still learning, myself included, obviously. We are still onboarding people as Bitcoiners in the sense that we're always talking about it, reaching out to people. Hey, have you heard of this? Or getting asked questions. So we always need to explain the why of Bitcoin. But in my role at Bitcoin Mentor now, I don't have to focus as much on, that part of the funnel, in the sense that I'm not dealing with people who are asking, well, why should I buy Bitcoin? I'm dealing with customers or clients who already have a little bit of Bitcoin. Maybe it's on exchange, maybe it's in some kind of wallet. They already have some, they understand a little bit of the value proposition, but they are also learning more and then trying to improve how they are holding their Bitcoin to become more sovereign in how they hold it and perhaps spend it.
Yeah, it's super interesting, the conversion and the connection also between the why and the how, because there are there are really great people that explain the why, like Michael Saylor, but I never heard him say on anything on the how side really. There are some things that he explains on the how sides, and then as you know from Bitcoin, there's also Ben from BTC Sessions. He is really focus on the how. I don't hear him a lot telling the why.
Yeah, Ben's done an incredible job building his YouTube channel and his following on just really sound technical advice, educational material. And, frankly, I learned a ton from Ben when I was getting started, as have many, many Bitcoiners. And it's nice to, again, you get to deal with people that are already interested in Bitcoin. And so they're sort of already, there's a natural inclination that they're open-minded. They're looking to get away from existing systems. There's obviously all kinds of tangents of different themes are in and around Bitcoin that you can explore and dive off of. But it's his material and his content is just very, very sound and just takes you through nice and slow, explains all the things he's doing as he's doing it, makes it really easy for someone who's already curious and maybe has a little bit of know-how to start getting their hands dirty without having to commit to something like, we are a paid service, so you don't have to necessarily commit. You can just follow it for free. And then if you have problems, okay, maybe you're going to come and check out something like Bitcoin Mentor.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I always say to people, if you really want to learn it yourself and you don't want to pay for a service or some kind of collaborative thing or anything like that, everything is out there. There's BTC sessions, there are great people. You just go there, learn and educate yourself and you will be good to go.
Yeah, everyone at Bitcoin Mentor will happily direct you to free resources. Obviously, again, I say, we're paid at what we do because some people want their hand held and need a little coaching and they want to be able to troubleshoot and ask questions, and you can't do that to a tutorial, to a video. But we have no problem sending people free resources. That's information is meant to be free. We want Bitcoin to proliferate, and that's one of the ways it proliferates. So yeah, the more ways to spread Bitcoin education, the better.
Absolutely. How do you look actually of what do you think is the biggest driver for Bitcoin? Because I feel like we have a lot of education out there, but at the end of the day, price is going up and then people coming in and then they discover all the books. It seems like that's the main reason, especially as someone that wrote a book.
Yeah. I wish I could sit here and tell you that, the freedom, sovereign aspect of Bitcoin, that's the thing that really resonates with people. But at the end of the day, price going up is the big, loud flashing light that just people cannot ignore. And that's the thing that brings the most people in. And so, yeah, it's that old saying, it's that expression in Bitcoin, you come for the money, you stay for the tech, or you stay for the revolution. So people, I think, initially get drawn to Bitcoin by the prospect of fiat profits, but if they stay long enough and they learn enough, inevitably they understand that fiat profits are not, in fact, the end goal of this. The end goal of this is we completely upend how money works in the real world.
Interesting. How far actually are you already on a Bitcoin standard, would you say?
I'm not all the way on living on a Bitcoin standard per se. I live in a big city. I have fiat bills. I would say from, day-to-day transactions, I still do a lot of fiat transactions, but in terms of my savings and my income, I am very significantly, in Bitcoin. Basically all my wealth is stored in Bitcoin. I have no other fiat stocks or, bonds or anything like that, or even gold. I used to be a gold bug. I mentioned I was a former banker and investment advisor, and basically I got, you could call it red pilled on Austrian economics and sound money and libertarian philosophy during the great financial crisis, which was right at the beginning of my career. And as a result of that, I became a gold bug because I thought, oh, they're just printing money out of nothing. Money is worthless. We should have money that cannot be printed and cannot be centrally controlled. And gold is a far, superior asset to dollars. So I initially started pouring my whatever wealth I had into Bitcoin, into gold. And then I held gold, physical gold, not paper gold. I held physical gold for, I think it was 11 or 12 years before I finally dumped the last of it. I think it was in 2021. I finally realized that, I'm starting to transact more in Bitcoin at that point. So this is in, 2021. I started to do a little bit more. I started experimenting with Lightning, using my first Lightning wallet, and realizing that I am never going to just send someone gold, or never going to, spend my gold. Or if it ever gets to the point that I need to spend my gold, things will be so bad that I'll be better off with lead than with gold, right? I'll be better off with a gun and some bullets than with a pile of yellow shiny rocks. So I just dumped it and have been, it's like a monkey off my back. It's a weight lifted, and, Bitcoin is the only money that matters for the future, and frankly, for an optimistic future.
It's so interesting, like holding physical gold at home. I mean, I don't know like how much, but like it seems like how do you keep that? Like how to keep it safe? Like I have a lot of questions on that.
I had a safe deposit box at my local bank, and it's not like I had those giant bricks, right? Those are, I had a few little ingots and coins and things, and it was just my savings in effect. But I didn't have a safe or anything in my house. I lived in a condo at the time. And so, okay, I guess I'll store it at the bank, which of course, in hindsight, is like, why am I storing the money that's supposed to make me sovereign with the entity that is acting as a gatekeeper to my sovereignty? Like that, there's a strong disconnect there. So Bitcoin allows me to very easily separate that. And I can be much more sovereign with, okay, I hold and am responsible for my money, and there's no one else who I rely on.
Yeah, this is the question that none of the gold bugs really can answer. How does gold make you more sovereign? Do you keep all your wealth in gold at home? What if someone comes to your home?
Yeah, I've tried to have some conversations with some people who are perhaps newer to gold, and especially in the last few years, inflation has become more of a topic in circles outside of Bitcoin, where people are starting to see gold as more attractive. And understandably, it still has valuable qualities. It's just not the apex, predator of money per se. And so I had a conversation with someone. I'll get into the nuance of this conversation with you to give you a good example of why it's just not going to be money. So I live in Canada. We famously had the Freedom Convoy in 2022, in early 2022. Canadians donated, at first it was like $18 or $19 million to the truckers. And then GoFundMe froze that money at the government's request. And then there was another fiat donation drive through Give, Send, Go, where I think they raised another $10 or $11 million. And again, that got frozen. So Bitcoiners online randomly sort of gathered up and said, you know what, we should do something about this. And they ended up sending, I think it was $1.2 million worth of Bitcoin at the time to the truckers. And I was talking to a Canadian podcaster who was, let's say, somewhat involved with the trucker convoy, but just a freedom-oriented individual. And I said to her, so you think gold is valuable now and there's merit to it? And she thought Bitcoin had merit too. And I said, so why didn't the gold bugs donate to the truckers? Where were the gold donations to the truckers? Why didn't they, gold bugs say gold is money. Have you ever seen a gold bug spend gold as money or use it as money? Or do they just hoard it for like the worst case scenario? And that's the thing that also really gets me, is gold is that doomsday money. It's in a world where everything is shut down. There's no internet and no telecommunications, and all our services are really ramped down, and everything has to become apocalyptic in a sense. Like that's where gold starts to be used as money, because again, if our digital products and, if our phones and computers are unavailable and the internet's unavailable, okay, I guess we use it then. But that's kind of a dismal view of the future. And I don't want that. I don't want to push my energy towards that. Bitcoin is much more optimistic and hopeful because, in the future, I think we all still benefit from having this technology. Now, are we using it correctly with social media and stuff and the way they manipulate our attention? That is wrong. But the tools itself, if we change how we use it, can be used to be much more productive and make us happier and more efficient. And Bitcoin has a role in that version of the future. And so gold doesn't. And so I just focus. This is where I want to push my energy towards and where I want to push my value towards, because this is where I think the world needs to go.
That's super interesting. You are definitely aware of Jeff Booth, and he said in my last podcast with him, so I did 2 rounds with him. In the second round, he said something I struggle, but that might actually be a good thing. He said if Bitcoin fails as a medium of exchange, it will ultimately also fail as a store of value. And it's just a question in my head, what he really meant by it. And I really want to get deep within maybe in a third round. But as you just said, gold is really bad as a medium of exchange. So you ultimately also got to that decision. I don't want to hold it. I don't want to use it also as a store of value. So this is kind of, I just made the connection of that makes total sense. Gold as a store of value hasn't failed in particular, but it could probably be 10x, 100x bigger if it also would be an amazing medium of exchange.
Yeah. If, again, in theory, if you could have a digitized version of gold that was actually one-to-one to the gold and you could verify it, then sure, gold would have some merit. It has that 1% to 2% inflation rate. But again, the problem comes in where there's no real way to verify it, right? Apparently the US dollars were all backed by gold one day and then the next day they weren't, right? Because they made too many promises for the amount of gold they had. And so they had to cut the gold tie. And so we already know what happens if we try to use gold as a medium of exchange, because there's no way to make it work seamlessly online that we can send it around the world basically instantly, because its physical presence becomes a negative, becomes a drawback to gold as money, as a medium of exchange. Again, in times where we didn't have this digital infrastructure, sure, it made a lot more sense, but that's not the world we live in now. Now we live in a world where we have computers, we have the internet, we have cell phones and mobile phones and smartphones. And so we need a money that is interoperable with these technologies. And Bitcoin just fits so much more seamlessly than gold ever could.
Yeah, and I see Bitcoin as the digital version of gold, like the one-to-one pack onto gold, what you described. I see that in Bitcoin. Obviously, there's never a one-to-one pack with something physical, because there's always someone trusted in between.
That's
so
exactly
you cannot
it.
do that. So the best version of that is Bitcoin.
That's right. Because again, the ledger, Bitcoin's ledger, the entirety of the ledger, all of the 21 million units can all be verified online without anyone in between doing it. With gold, the thing exists, right? If I'm holding a gold nugget in my hand and it has a barcode or a serial number of, ABC123, well, how do I document that token ABC123 is inextricably linked to this coin, and that whoever holds the token will have absolute property rights and claims to this coin or token, to this coin in my hand. And there's just no way to do that, because if I'm holding it, I could just hand it to the person next to me and now they have it, but the token is owned by someone somewhere else. And so again, how do you enforce that claim? Because that's basically not possible. It doesn't make sense. It'll never work. It'll never work. Full stop. There's nothing I can really add to that. It'll never fully work. Whereas Bitcoin, again, my key, if I have my private key, I can prove 100%. No one, it's very binary, yes or no. Yes, I control my Bitcoin. No, I don't. If I control the key, I control the coins. Very simple. I can't do that with gold. If I control the gold private key token, but the coin, the physical coin, exists somewhere else in the real world, well, someone else might have it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's this is. I mean, I did not think we make gold Bitcoin, but it's just something that annoys me a lot with gold bugs when they always talk about the sovereignty and the importance of gold, and then they're like, oh, but you could have a digital version of gold and just like have that and verify it, and like, how do you verify? Like, that's not possible.
As soon as you start to go down that train of thought, the ultimate logical conclusion of that train of thought is Bitcoin. And it's better because there's the absolute scarcity versus we don't actually know how much gold exists in the earth crust. And, as time goes on and the price, let's say, of gold goes up, as Seyr has mentioned, when price goes up, gold miners will go further into the wilderness and dig deeper into the earth to try to find more gold because there's more incentive to do so. Whereas with Bitcoin, if price goes up, yeah, we can work harder in terms of mining to get more Bitcoin, but it's not going to change how much Bitcoin is coming online. It's just going to drive up the competition to earn that exact same scarce amount of Bitcoin.
And this is something I think, and I always say that nobody is bullish enough on Bitcoin. I think CK is probably the most known for that phrase. And I will soon have Samson Ma on the podcast. Let's see if he's bullish enough on Bitcoin. I guess
think he's pretty bullish on Bitcoin. Yeah,
he's definitely very bullish on it. But I think most, like 95% of even Bitcoiners, I feel like, are not bullish enough on Bitcoin, just because we don't know what this digital scarcity actually means. If like 8 billion people can have it and you cannot make more of it, and we never really had that.
Yeah, the combination of absolute scarcity as well as just the sheer value of the fiat monetary premium that exists, whether it's in art and real estate and gold and all these, and stocks and all these other assets and debt, I suppose, to compute and really think about how much value could flow in at the end of the day and how much value is still yet to be artificially created in the fiat world that will also flow in, because as Lynn Alden would say, right, there's no stopping the train in terms of the money printing and the debt binge spending. So there's still so much room to go, so much more demand to come in. And, if you're having conversations in the real world, it's so funny how, even for me, I've been in Bitcoin, call 8 years or so, 8.5 years, and it's still a broken record of conversations. People who I've had the same conversations with every year, every 6 months, every 18 months, whatever it may be. The conversation started when Bitcoin was maybe 5,000, and then we have the conversation at 25,000. Then we have the conversation it's 90,000, and my message is still the exact same. Just, you should stack some Bitcoin, like have some Bitcoin, accumulate. You don't have to buy a whole coin if you can't afford it, but just having zero is the wrong amount of Bitcoin. Have some. You can have your other assets if you're not really ready to dive all the way into Bitcoin at the start. Not everyone is. You have to learn more about it and get comfortable with it before you're going to take the leap or go all in. And obviously, as time goes on, whatever little bit you may have started with starts to become a bigger and bigger part of your portfolio. And so naturally, you're also going to pay more attention to it and become more interested in it. Yeah.
Why do you think it's so hard to understand, or like different ask, what do you think we can do better as Bitcoin educators?
I wish I had a great answer for that. Be consistent, which we are. I think maybe, I will give you one thing we can do is ask questions rather than tell people what you think. It's easy for a Bitcoiner to go, hey, you should look at Bitcoin because this, that, and the other, rather than pushing your message onto people, which, as we know from just our normal conversations, people like to be heard, right? And just want to get their point of view across. But truly engaging with someone and activating them and using the Socratic method of asking a question and getting them to see if they really know the answer. And if they don't, again, pushing further by asking more questions of, well, you should look into this. And what do you think? And, do you know how fractional reserve banking works? Do you know that that's how our monetary system is run? Do you understand how fiat is a debt-backed currency and is destined to just take on more and more debt, because any reduction in debt is basically a form of deflation, which they do not permit. And effectively leads to the bankruptcy of the system. So they necessarily need to keep printing. pushing the questions and asking about fiat so they can try to understand the problem, maybe that will help guide people more towards, okay, maybe I can start to see Bitcoin as a solution rather than just some random thing that's been invented that is obscure and complex and people seem to be in love with and they're in a cult and all that stuff. Get them thinking would be my message, to ask questions.
I love that so much that you brought that up. I often ask people completely new to Bitcoin, if you are God, how would you define or build the perfect money?
Okay. That is amazing because I've done the same thing. And there was at one point in time, I wanted to write a blog post or something about like, how would you build the perfect money? Like start asking people, if you could make the perfect money, what do you think it should be? What do you think it should look like? So yeah, we're very much aligned in that.
I even did that in an Austrian university at it was not a university course. It was from an individual organization, but it was in the university. And I think there were like 30 people there and it was supposed to be like 1.5 hour long, a course on Bitcoin. But I was like, I will not stand there 1 hour and explain what Bitcoin is. I want to give them something to think about because I know I cannot orange pill anyone in 1.5 hours.
Yeah.
And I literally made the first half an hour like, hey, what do you think what is the perfect money for you? Like what attributes, what properties, what things have to happen? And people say like, oh yeah, I want that the perfect money should be everywhere accepted. I should not be exchanging it like when I cross borders. And there were like 50 things coming along the way. Then you just group them and categorize them, and you're like, oh shit, like that's the properties of sound money. Yeah. And then we just went through all the assets, like, oh, like would Bitcoin fulfill that? Would euros fulfill that? And just to make a long story short, this course was so cool. It was supposed to be 1.5 hour long. We were there for 4 hours without break, and everyone loved it because everyone was involved and we were discussing about different properties. Oh, I don't like that if perfect money. Oh, I would like all of a sudden there were 20 people that never thought about money discussing what perfect money would be, and they came to the conclusion, yeah, like Bitcoin is actually a really good idea.
So what you did, again, sort of following that Socratic method of asking questions is, and like you said, rather than you pushing the message on them and talking about Bitcoin and highlighting all the amazing attributes of Bitcoin, by asking the questions and stirring the pot of discussion, you're getting them to orange pill themselves. Rather than you orange pilling them, their active engagement and conversation and back and forth ends up orange pilling themselves because now they've come to the conclusion in a sense that, oh yeah, there's merit to this thing. Bitcoin actually accomplishes a lot of this stuff we think makes sense and we need. Oh, maybe I should look more into this. So that's brilliant. That's brilliant. That's well done.
Let's take a break for a moment and appreciate the beauty that Coin Vigilante has made with the Bitcoin watches. Those watches are the most amazing, the most elegant way of showing that you are a true Bitcoiner. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece. Make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. And now if you have Bitcoin, I really do hope that you don't have it on exchange. But if you do have it on exchange, I have 2 ways for you to deal with that. The first way is you put it on a hardware wallet. That's the entry for you to get into the self-custody game. I recommend BitBox, Bitcoin only edition for that. It's a super simple and secure way. And if you check out the link in the description, you even get 5% off if you use the code Robin. And the second way is the Bitcoin Way. The Bitcoin Way is your all-in partner in terms of how to get the most out of your sovereignty. They will personalize analyze for you a self-custody setup that is perfect for your individual situation. They will show you how you can secure your own devices. Securing your Bitcoin is not enough. You also have to keep all your devices secure. One topic that is overlooked often is the inheritance plan. What happens with your Bitcoin once you are no longer here? Do you have a plan for that in place already? And last but not least, if you're in the jurisdictions where you don't feel safe, it's better to get a plan B. For all that, head over to thebitcoinway.com/Robin to get a 30-minute free call. And just a quick side note, I will be for the first time ever speaking at the Bitcoin Prague event in June. It will be absolutely legendary, and I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you there. You can get your ticket in the link down in the description of Bitcoin Prague, and very important, use code Robin to get 10% off your ticket. I'm really looking forward seeing you there. Yeah, we categorized the different columns and named it, and then we listed the assets, and we was like, does this asset accomplish that? And I started with the euro, like it was in Austria, like euro is our fiat currency. And everyone is like, oh, weird. Our currency that we use every day is really far away from perfect money.
Yeah. But
yeah,
people, but people are just so set in their ways, and there's a bit of ego involved with shaking out someone's pre-existing beliefs, right? To get them to admit that the thing that they've been doing their whole lives or that they're so accustomed to is wrong is very, very difficult. People get set in their ways. It's understandable. We all have a little bit of that. And it's very difficult to truly be open-minded to, hey, can I consider the possibility that I am wrong? That's something I believe or I think is wrong. It's tricky. It's hard. It requires, again, coming back to Jeff Booth a little bit, you have to be willing to sacrifice your ego to an extent. And so it's rare to find that in someone. And it's even harder to create that environment for someone.
It's super, super, super rare. I mean, we all are every day a victim of that ourselves, and even as Bitcoiners, we have probably things in our lives where we could be more open, but money is such a weird thing because we interact with it every day, and like, oh, you never asked the question, what is money?
Yeah.
And I asked myself Michael Saylor, I think, was saying that in his early podcasts that before Bitcoin, he really never asked the question, what is money? And he dealt with a lot of money.
Of course. Yeah. Again, it's like, why would you? You're raised as a kid. The dollars are your system. You're used to the bank accounts. It starts with checks and dollar bills, and it graduates to credit cards and debit cards, and now gift certificates and whatnot, or electronic transfers and Venmo and all that kind of stuff. And it's just this gradual shift. It's part of the same story, and it's been around for as long as you are aware. So who are you to rock the boat and suggest that it could be different or better somehow? We're just humble plebs, right? What do we know that the lords of finance, that the central bankers and the Jamie Dimons and the Mark Carneys of the world, that they don't know, that these guys who've been at the tippy top of the pyramid and get to look down and see all the things, like, they should know best. And, we should probably have a degree of faith in them because things have been working well enough. And so, yeah, it's very, very hard to challenge that and question that. And because that sort of institutional structure and the messaging apparatus, right? It's all very strong or seemingly strong, I should say. So it's very, very tricky to push back against that, especially against, again, people who are just very set in their ways because, okay, the system, yeah, it's not perfect, but it's good enough, right? People are willing to settle, well, it's good enough. Well, I don't want to have to change because this is working and I'm familiar with it.
How do you think then we are coming to this Bitcoin world? Will it be that most people will be forced into it because it will be so obvious and they're like kind of peer pressured into it, or will people actually wake up and realize what Bitcoin is?
It seems to me, we've talked about, or I shouldn't say we, as in you and me, but we know the gradually then suddenly ethos, Parker Lewis's essays. I believe was it Corey Clipston wrote about the intransigent minority. Alex Svetsky, I forget what he wrote. I forget the exact title of his article, but basically there seems to be a prevailing school of thought, and it makes sense to me, that you're going to get the 5-10% of people who just eventually clue in and get it and are strong enough in their convictions. And it could be 3%. I shouldn't say 5 to 10%, 2, 3, 5%, whatever the number is, a very small minority that just get it. And when enough wealth and influence sort of accumulates there, it inevitably just pulls the masses along, and they're not necessarily going to have a say in it. It's just things will drift that way, and they will all benefit from it. You know, whether they're early adopters or not, everyone benefits, in my view, from the world, you know, shifting to a larger Bitcoin standard. It's obviously a long-term trend, and it's starting perhaps to crescendo to some degree, or at the beginning of its, you know, the current run. But every time I think, oh yeah, Bitcoin's going to go up and then everyone's going to pay attention, it's never quite the case. There's still a lot of power and influence and wealth on the other side of things that needs to be won over. And it's going to take a lot of time. But it seems to me that there's just sort of this mushy middle ground of people, whether it's 50%, 60%, 80% of people, that they'll just follow the strongest leader when the strongest leader emerges. And Bitcoin is strong. Is it the strongest leader? Not yet, but it is very, very strong and seeming, you know, gaining in strength and momentum. And the more that happens, the more likely it is that, okay, the mushy middle will inevitably just follow along.
Yeah, there's this theory on if 4% of the world are completely intolerant about Bitcoin, they only want to earn in Bitcoin, they only want to spend in Bitcoin, they only want to save in Bitcoin.
Yep.
This is kind of forcing everyone else also to accept Bitcoin, because 4% are like really hardcore on it, which means probably like 10, 20, 30% really also like it. And then there's like really fast majority building if like a hardcore group of 4% is really hard on it.
Yeah. So that school of thought or line of thinking, that makes sense to me. You know, I'm not smart enough to game plan exactly how all the dominoes are going to fall. All I can say is that, you know, I see the incentives lining up and I see the trends, and I think it's coming. It's just a matter of time and how the dominoes fall over, let's say.
You said something interesting before. You said a positive future with Bitcoin. What do you think is different in a Bitcoin world than the world we have now? I mean, now we already have Bitcoin, but like a pre-Bitcoin world.
Everything. Bitcoin, you become more discerning when you have Bitcoin and you decide that, okay, at some point everyone's going to spend some of their Bitcoin, right? I don't think we should aim for the world where we own our Bitcoin and then we borrow against it in fiat. I mean, I get the appeal and the benefit of that, don't get me wrong, but like that's not the end state of things. The end state is fiat is worthless at some point, and so all that borrowing concept fades away. And rather than living in a debt-based system, which is the fiat system, and using it to our advantage, which some people are able to do, right? Saylor is able to use the fiat system to his advantage to accumulate much more Bitcoin than he could otherwise. We would ultimately be living in a capital-based system where, again, you either have capital or you don't. You either have Bitcoin or you don't, Bitcoin being the capital. And because capital is scarce, you become more discerning with how, why, and when you spend it. Fiat, it's like easy come, easy go, right? We can just accumulate Bitcoin. We'll take out more and more debt. Accumulate more and more fiat, take out more and more debt. So you can spend and be a bit of a consumer and buy things you don't need and get that that sort of instant gratification of you know, the retail therapy of buying things that are fleeting and don't really matter. But with Bitcoin, you're going to be more careful because you only have so much. And sure, it's still the purchasing power appreciates over time, but you don't want to spend it unwisely because it's difficult to come by and to accumulate. And so if we're changing our thought process in terms of both earning and spending, then of course that's going to manifest in economic activity. So things that are wasteful and unnecessary and harmful will start to fall by the wayside because people are going to spend their money on things that they think they're going to get much better long-term value for. And so everything changes.
I love that. It's like I describe Bitcoin kind of as a fork in the road of humanity.
Yeah.
There are certain forks in the road of human civilization. I mean, there's like printing press, electricity, the steam engine. Like there's many different examples, and I think Bitcoin might even be the biggest one, just because it touches on money.
That's the thing. I in the intro to my book, I wrote about, or I describe, if you have bad money, you have bad social outcomes. There's a direct correlation. But if you have good, honest, sound money, you're going to have good, honest, sound outcomes. It's not to say that the outcomes are going to be perfect, but it's going to be significantly improved compared to the direction we're going in now. There's less, inclination for destruction and waste, which obviously there's this incentive to destroy and create waste now. That fades away on a more Bitcoin-focused standard. So bad money, bad outcomes, good money, good outcomes. That's total fork, just like you said.
It brings the truth in the system. Also, I really like the personal accountability that Bitcoin brings in it. When you all of a sudden are your own bank and you cannot blame the banks, the governments, whatever, for anything else. You're like, hey, that's my Bitcoin. I'm sovereign of it. I am in control to make more of it and stuff like that. So like, I think personal accountability and the truth back in the system really changes a lot in our society.
Yeah, personal responsibility is just like time preference. Personal responsibility is a huge, huge element in this. Again, with fiat, you don't have to take personal responsibility. The bank looks after it for me. If I send a wire or I do a purchase on my credit card, I can call them up. I made a mistake, reverse it. Someone hacked me. Can you go in and restore the balance or whatever it's going to be? That doesn't exist in Bitcoin. Like, you have to do it for yourself. And the very act of taking that responsibility, it is personally empowering. And again, that's part of the thing that sort of manifests in your decisions out in the real world.
Yeah, it kind of reflects on it. I also want to touch with you on the Bitcoin community because it could be interesting. How do you look at what the current Bitcoin community is like? I see a lot of those mirroring effects of people put their own values onto Bitcoin and then expect like the community to also behave like that. I mean, with my favorite example is always diet. They are like carnivore, steak eaters. They are like vegans in Bitcoin, and they are like, that's how I eat. I have Bitcoin. That's how all Bitcoiners should eat. How do you look at the community currently in Bitcoin?
The way I see it is they are trying to get to the truth, right? And they're adamant and they're passionate. And so, sure, eating meat seemingly seems to be better for you. I've certainly become, I eat meat much more frequently than I did 5 or 6 years ago, and I don't have to feel bad about it or anything like that. I think it's good for me. But I'm still open-minded to, is this the only way? It's not that I'm a full carnivore or anything like that. But I can take the information that Bitcoiners are willing to put out there and incorporate it into my life. And if you're meeting people in the real world, you can start to learn from them and their experiences because, again, they're more open-minded, right? If they came to Bitcoin, they have to be open-minded to some degree. And so they've already killed their ego to a degree. They're willing to be wrong about things. So you can talk through things. I find it easier. They're more comfortable with talking through difficult subject matter. They're willing to be wrong. We think we're right about a few things. Bitcoin is one. Sure, carnivore could be another. That we think, there's probably more benefits than not. But I think at large, the point is they're more open-minded, and as a result of that, you get to discover more about what's out there and what you can do. You don't have to follow a pre-prescribed path that may have existed. There are infinite possibilities, and you can just do things, right? You go out there and just figure out what's happening and why something's happening, and just try things and see what happens. Maybe carnivore is good for you. Maybe it's not. Maybe some people, it does, meat doesn't. I have a friend who, he likes his red meat, but it upsets his stomach. It's just who he is. He would love to probably eat more of it, but he just can't. So that's okay. Like, that's who he is. He has to work with what's best for him. But at least he's, can look around and understand, oh yeah, there may be something here, but it doesn't always have to be for me.
Very, very true. Yeah, like you have to, and that's a big thing actually. This talking through things and being open to things. I've noticed a lot in the Bitcoin community. Even if you throw something at someone that they really disagree with, outside of Twitter,
Yeah.
They are willing to talk through that, and they are really open to that. I think Twitter is always a special place for fights, and it encourages fights and all those things. So if someone just lives in the Bitcoin community just on Twitter, I just can say, go out, go to a meetup, go to a conference. People are actually really chill.
Yeah, yeah.
Really open-minded.
Yeah, Twitter is not real life. Like it can be fun at times. It can also be depressing at times. So, you got to balance it out. But it's designed to suck away your attention. I think we know that, or should know that. But yeah, like you said, you go to a meetup and you talk to people who might seem very toxic online, and for the most part, they're pretty chill and happy to have a conversation. And there's a topic they may be adamant about online, but in person, they see, the human being on the other side of it, just as you're seeing them as the human being on the other side of things. And then suddenly everyone can become more relatable. And there's room for discussion, as opposed to just, it's not 180 limit character limit anymore, but just, okay, I got to get my point across in this short little time span. And I have to be right because, Mom, someone's wrong on the internet. I got to stay up late and, prove them wrong or whatever. Like, that doesn't happen in the real world.
Very true. One more topic that I really want to discuss with you around the Bitcoin mentors is what kind of question you're usually getting, and what are you trying to do there? So it's like, what are the common question that you usually get?
Common question. So, we're tending to focus on wallets are one of the key components of what we do. We help with nodes. We can help with mining. We can help with some other stuff, the third-party servers or open source servers, things like Start9 and Umbrel and all that. But really the questions are, how do I describe this? They can be technical, but also kind of straightforward if you're a seasoned Bitcoiner. So things just like how private keys work and how backups work, or UTXOs. If you get your first wallet, you just sort of send and receive, and you think it's as simple as that. And to a degree it is, but there's also so much nuance. And so as we get to know people, we have the opportunity to dive further and further in and help them gain knowledge in the nuanced areas, again, of sending and receiving Bitcoin. Great. But then how do I manage my UTXOs if I'm going to worry about privacy or worry about fees in the future? So I hesitate to say that I receive common questions because everyone's a little bit different. But I do find myself trying to find relatable analogies for how things work so that they can really envision and have a clear picture of the tools in their hands and how and why it works. And I'll give you a couple quick examples. Number one, when we talk about private keys, one of the analogies I like to use is, think of the wallet. If you're using something like Sparrow Wallet, and it doesn't matter if you Nunchuck, Blue Wallet, whatever wallet it may be, it's sort of like a browser. It doesn't matter if you're using Chrome or Firefox or or Safari or whatever it may be. It's a browser, and if you go to your email account and you type in your email and your password, only you see those emails and only you can write from that email account. Your private key is like your password to your email. It doesn't matter what browser you're on. So I can use my mobile phone, my computer. I can open a browser on any browser and read my emails. Similarly, I can use my private key on any device, and I can see my coins and I can manage my coins. So that's sort of one analogy I like to use that really helps illustrate how the device itself is not the most important element of your Bitcoin setup. It's the backup of your seed phrase of your private key is actually the most important, and then how you obviously secure it. And if you're going to do multi-sig and all that stuff, that's a whole other story. And then another analogy that's come out of that wasn't mine, but one of my colleagues. I used to describe UTXOs as sort of like dollar bills, right? If I have a $50 bill and a $20 bill and a $10 bill in my wallet, I have 3 UTXOs. And maybe I send one and I'm going to get change back if I buy something. If I buy a sandwich for $20 or $25, I only have a 50, I give a 50, and I would get a $25 bill in return. Except the difference is in fiat, the denominations are preset, whereas in Bitcoin, it's whatever denomination is sent or received. But we sort of discovered that that's maybe not actually the best analogy. A better analogy is melting gold. So I have 1 ounce of gold and I'm going to pay something for something that's 0.2 ounces. Well, I'm going to melt down my gold, give off 0.2 to the person I'm buying from, and I keep the 0.8 instead, because every time you send and receive, you're sort of melting and recasting your gold, except this is digital as opposed to, really melting. And it happens like that as opposed to, sitting by a hot fire and melting it down and waiting for it to cool and dry after the fact.
It's a lot easier to melt Bitcoin together than melting gold together.
Yeah, there's a lot less work, at least on our end.
And I rarely do how-to videos, and for how-to videos, I always say go to BTC sessions. But I actually did one on UTXO management with one guy that I respect a lot in that field. It's Wicked. You probably know him. Yeah. And I did with him only, it's really rare that I do those kind of videos. I did only on UTXO management and on how to do it and why you should do it and why you should be caring about UTXO management, not just because of dust and unspendable Bitcoin, but also as a privacy standpoint, and manage all those things. So, if you wanna, if someone says oh, what the heck are they talking about UTXO management? That's a great start. Yeah. But yeah, BTC sessions has all the other how-to videos and how-to is way better. It was one of my attempts to also do some how-to videos, but I just enjoy way more just talking with people about the Bitcoin opinions.
yeah, exactly. This is more fun. Ben puts in some hard work. I can tell you, just getting to know him a little bit in the background. He works hard at his craft. Obviously, he's very, very good at what he does, and there's other great educators out there. Ben's not the only one, but I certainly believe he's one of the best that's out there. And yeah, it's great to see more people doing this, because we do need there can't just be one educator or one book or one podcast, right? It's the more the merrier. There's no single source of truth in Bitcoin. I tell people all the time, if you want to learn about Coca-Cola, you go to coca-cola.com, you read their quarterly statements, right? It's all in the one website. But if you want to learn about Bitcoin, there's no central repository to go to. You have to sort of cobble together information from different sources, and then you have to filter it yourself, because no one's pre-filtering it for you.
There is not really there is for me not a second Ben. So there's a lot of people that only focus on the why, and they sometimes also do a little bit of the how. But Ben is really unique because I think covered almost everything. I think he asked me actually when he was on the podcast, is there anything we didn't cover? Yeah. Because I should cover that. And I was like, I looked at the channel and I would not know any topic. And I couldn't say any other bigger YouTube channel in video format that does only how-to videos on Bitcoin, on only Bitcoin. Also, there are no crypto or anything like that.
Yeah, I'll say I think I'm aware of one or two other channels like Southern Bitcoiner. You mentioned Wicked, but obviously I think Ben is the biggest and perhaps for a lot of people the best, and I would agree is the best. Again, I learned a lot from him getting started. I consider him a friend. We work together. He's an awesome Bitcoiner. and just an awesome guy all around, frankly. As you know, you were as we were discussing on the show recently on Why Are We Bullish? So yeah.
But yeah, Wicked also has a YouTube channel. Oh gosh. I wasn't even aware. I always saw his Twitter.
Told you, there's no central repository. There may be the bigger and the best like Ben, but there can't be one single source of truth in Bitcoin.
Not even Ben.
Not even Ben. We love Ben, but there's not even Ben can be the single source of truth.
He will be happy. We talked too much about him today. But I love him. He's a great guy. I ask each and every single one of my guests the simple question: what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
Oh, what can you learn from me besides Bitcoin? I can probably teach you about a few mistakes I've made. Just to be open-minded and be willing to be wrong. Like, don't, and doesn't matter what topic. Literally, no topic should be out of bounds. Be willing to be wrong about things. Consider someone else's perspective and other people's point of views that, maybe they have some insights you don't. None of us are omnipotent. We don't know everything. We have tons of information at our fingertips. But do we have all the information and do we have all the necessary wisdom to correctly assemble that information? Probably not. So it's good to learn and figure things out. But no matter how well you think you figure things out, what's that phrase? It's, strong opinions weakly held. So learn, be open-minded, grow smarter, work harder, but don't be afraid to change your mind when new information presents itself. I know I have over time. Yeah.
A big thing is also for me, as you said, like the excluding things. I think all Bitcoiners can really talk about that because they haven't excluded Bitcoin. And I think a lot of people right now exclude Bitcoin, they dismiss it and don't even give it a fair chance because they heard some weird line from newspaper or a friend or a cousin or like whatever. And now they dismiss it because of that reason. And it's a reason why most people are not here.
I said all through COVID that propaganda is a hell of a drug, and it's true for that particular period of time. It's true for Bitcoin. It's true in many other fields. And once you start to see through that and understand that it's out there, whether you think you live in the free world with free press and free information, that there's lots of information that is purposely trying to confuse you or divide you. You can start to pierce the veil, then you can start to approach topics with a new set of eyes and really start to assemble on your own merit and through your own critical thinking what makes sense, what doesn't. Do things work? Do they not work? And become a better person as a result.
100%. We have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And it's it's a very cliche question, and I'm surprised that in almost I'm 3 episodes to 500 guests, almost 500 episodes, nobody ever asked that question, and you get the cliche question. What's the meaning of life?
Is 42, I believe, is the correct answer, right?
It's 42, the number 42. Yeah,
we're all finding out. I'm eager to discover the meaning of life. I'm actively working on it. I don't expect I'll ever figure it out, but I'm working hard to get there.
I love that. It's actually when the previous guest asked me that, what do you think is the meaning of life? And I'm like, I'm 26. Like, I don't think I have an answer with 50, but I'm sure I don't have an answer now.
I got a few years on you, and I'm probably no further ahead than you are.
Oh gosh, thank you so much, Jesse. It was a lot of fun with you talking, and I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
Absolutely. I'm on Twitter at jberjay, JayBerjay. My book, Magic Internet Money, a book about Bitcoin, here it is available on Amazon and basically anywhere else that you can buy ebooks or audiobook. And if you want to learn more about me, my bio, and or just learn about Bitcoin Mentor and the service we offer, you can go to bitcoinmentor.io.
Really cool. Thank you so much for taking the time, Jesse. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.